Hello, this is David Gordon-Koch reporting for the NB Media Co-op from Moncton. I'm speaking today to Megan Mitton, Green Party MLA for Memramcook Tantramar and Deputy Leader of the party. She's a member of the Standing Committee on Climate Change and Environmental Stewardship, which has been holding hearings this week. Thanks for joining the NB Media Co-op today, Megan.
Thank you for having me.
So, senior officials from the Department of Natural Resources told lawmakers on Tuesday that they haven't yet introduced a number of the recommendations from a November 2021 report on herbicide spraying meant to curtail this practice somewhat. The delay is notable, I guess, in part because Premier Holt has given several members of her cabinet a mandate to implement those recommendations, including John Herron, Minister of Natural Resources. You were on the committee that penned that report following, I think, pretty extensive hearings back in 2021, and so was Mike Holland, who was the Minister of Natural Resources at the time. So, what do you make of this?
It is completely unacceptable, but not surprising that DNR has not implemented many of these recommendations. Department of Environment has not implemented some of their recommendations as well. And it is notable, there are ministers on this committee, ministers who are responsible for these departments like Department of Natural Resources. And they were part of the committee that made these recommendations. And so I did not receive a good explanation for why they have not implemented these, but it's very unacceptable. We're almost 4 years out from this being published.
Those senior officials who testified on Tuesday indicated that they are concerned about implementing some of these restrictions on spraying because they said it would impact the timber supply significantly. Norfolk, I believe the acting assistant deputy minister who made that remark. So what does this tell us about the decision-making process within the Department of Natural Resources, in your view?
This tells us that even though MLAs representing New Brunswickers from all parties, including ministers, told the department to take these actions, they have listened to or wanted to protect the interests of industry when it comes to the spraying of glyphosate and herbicides in our forests. And so the priority here hasn't been the environment, hasn't been health, hasn't been to actually respond to what the MLAs directed them to do. It's been to maintain the status quo, basically.
Just wondering, you've attended these hearings over the years. I'm sure that you have heard from industry as well during this time. What have representatives from J.D. Irving, for example, said about how banning or reducing herbicide spraying will affect them?
Certainly, there are financial interests that companies like JDI have when it comes to environmental protections. And unfortunately, the way government keeps treating these issues is as if there's no cost to pollution, for example, to spraying in terms of biodiversity, in terms of the impact on our ecosystems. These are sort of externalities that don't get captured when we're looking at the economy. And so, of course, corporations they want to maximize their profits. And so, of course, that's what they're going to lobby for. But our job as MLAs is to look out for the best interest of New Brunswickers. And so that's unfortunately not being carried out by DNR.
Something that stuck out for me, Chris Norfolk, one of these officials, said there was, quote, some movement on the recommendations, specifically that natural resources had apparently increased what he called setbacks related to habitations from 155 meters to 500 meters, he said earlier this year. But the 2021 report actually recommended that those buffers be increased from 500 meters to 1 kilometer from dwellings or habitations.
Mhm.
So apparently MLAs from the all party committee believed that this 500 meter restriction was already in place in 2021 when they penned that report. Is that correct? You were on that committee again.
So, the leader of the Green Party, David Kuhn, was the one attending those hearings at the time, because I had just had my son Henry a couple months before, and so he was substituting for me on that committee at the time. I have read the report and participated in other ways. And so what I can speak to is that the committee wanted the buffer zone to be a kilometer, and they have increased it from 155 meters to 500 meters. I heard Minister Heron say in a scrum this week that actually it sounds like JDI sometimes has a kilometer buffer zone anyway. And so if this is the case, then is JDI actually even going further than DNR is? I would like to know more about why DNR I'd like them to present evidence around why they are not willing to do that. And I'd like to understand why they are taking so long to do some of the other things, like prepare a cost benefit analysis of what the implications would be for not using herbicides and glyphosate and that transition. This is something that, again, this all-party committee requested almost 4 years ago, and they were telling us it'll be ready for March 2027. That is just so unacceptable. That is so far out, and that's just to create an analysis and a plan, let alone implementation.
But I mean, again, it says right in black and white in this report that we want this increase from 500 meters from dwellings to 1 kilometer, and yet these officials testified yesterday that they'd increased it from 155 to 500 meters. So it seems like there's something missing there. There's something odd about this, and you tried to ask about it.
I'm wondering if you can quickly address question number 10, or sorry, recommendation number 10, that setbacks for aerial spraying be increased from 500 meters to 1 kilometer from dwellings. That was not covered in your presentation.
There was actually a recent change in the setback distance. So as Chris mentioned, originally it was 155 meters from dwellings, and it has been recently switched to 500, I believe. What also happens, though, is that anyone within 1 kilometer of that particular block does get a notification that spray program is happening in that area.
Okay. My time has expired.
The officials in question seem to dodge the question. Do you agree with that assessment, or what do you think about the response that you received when you raised that on Tuesday?
I found it frustrating that, and so the Department of Environment came earlier this year, and then DNR came this week. And there were certain questions that I asked and didn't get very direct or comprehensible answers to. And so this was one of them that they hadn't included in their presentation, but that was important for the committee to understand what has happened. Another one was whether they've created a legislative officer or not. We were told by ELG that they had created one, and then to ask DNR about it. Clearly, one hasn't been created. And so they've gone through and marked a bunch of these things completed, even though they are clearly not. So they clearly haven't gone to a kilometer buffer zone. They clearly we haven't created a new legislative officer. And so it's a bit confounding, frankly, to have these types of answers in committee when clearly we can see that they're not complete.
Now, for bodies of water and wetlands, the report called for a minimum 100-meter aerial spraying setback, or spray plans that may vary depending on the landscape and hydrological characteristics of the land. Now, Chris Norfolk indicated that those recommendations hadn't been implemented, though he said that over the past 5 years, no spraying has occurred in designated watersheds on Crown land in New Brunswick.
Even if the spraying hasn't happened, I would still like to see that put into the law and the policy to prevent it from happening in the future. That is something that is important. We can't just accept that, oh, well, we're not doing it now and just sort of rely on sort of goodwill. We don't know what will happen in the future. And so there's a reason we have laws and policies. And so I would like to see that recommendation fulfilled, and it hasn't been.
You mentioned that this study, the report called for an economic study that would evaluate the impact of a potential ban. These officials said that study won't be ready till 2027. And I guess from listening to their comments, it seems fair to say that they generally defended the current spraying practices in New Brunswick, stressed the importance for industry of spraying, and downplayed how extensively it occurs, saying at one point there's not very much spraying at all done. So do you think that this gives us a hint about what the outcome of this eventual report might actually be?
I think that what was said definitely gives some hints in terms of the priorities around maximizing profit for companies and minimizing the how much they say that glyphosate and herbicides have an impact, and the actual the proof is in the pudding. Did they carry out these actions that they were directed to? In many cases, no. And so I think that's also a good indicator. And so I think between the two, we can see that we need political leadership to ensure that, from a ministerial level, these things get implemented. We need the political will that, again, I was happy to have at least some political will come out of this committee. That doesn't always happen. And it's disappointing that that it hasn't gone as far as it should.
Just about the sort of decision-making process, or the way that, directives are carried out within a department, it seems like one might argue that senior servants don't answer to, recommendations in a committee report. They answer to their minister. And so I guess this makes me wonder, regardless of what the mandate letter from Susan Holt said, do you think that this indicates that, in fact, the ministers are not instructing their senior civil servants to carry out this kind of policy? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it is quite possible that even though some of these ministers would have been, well, I guess actually these exact ministers responsible for DNR and ELG at different points would have been on the committee, that they have not given the direction. And so I think that's an assumption that that could be true in terms of under the Higgs government, and then in terms of under the Holt government. If we haven't seen these actions, then why not? And ultimately, yeah, the direction does come from government. And so it's possible that behind the scenes they said, yeah, we signed on to these recommendations, but don't actually do them, or don't go very quickly, or what, who knows? I'd like to know exactly what was said.
Definitely raises some questions about government transparency. Now, the group Stop Spraying NB released their latest report card. As you know, this week they gave the Greens a B-, faulting you for not introducing new legislation in the latest session for a ban. Any comment on this?
We have introduced legislation multiple times, and we regularly, I've presented a petition not long ago on behalf of Stop Spraying NB. We only have so many times that we're able to debate our legislation, but we do, when we can't bring legislation, bring motions and bring petitions, and we will continue to fight for this. I do think we are the most vocal when it comes to the need to ban glyphosate spraying, and to rethink how we do forestry in this province, and we will continue to speak up about that.
Any plans to introduce such legislation in the coming session?
So we right now are making our plans for what to bring forward, And so certainly this is always something that's on our radar. And so it's possible we would bring legislation, or like I said, use other tools to bring attention to it. The people who can absolutely bring forward legislation and ensure it gets debated and implemented is government. And so I would call on the Holt government to bring forward legislation to do just that.
Now, as if that was enough to catch up on, the committee was also reviewing the Clean Air Act. On the agenda were presentations from the NB Lung Association, Willistoke Grand Council. There was a researcher from the University of Sherbrooke. There's a presentation from J.D. Irving, East Coast Environmental Law, and the St. John Citizens Coalition for Clean Air. Now, we can't cover all of this in one interview, but Megan, I just wanted to get your comment, some of your major takeaways and things that that you would like to draw people's attention to from these hearings.
Yeah, so I would say the presenters, the majority, all of them except ones with a financial interest in, keeping the status quo. All the other presenters, they were saying we need to reduce air pollution, that we need to understand that there's no safe level of air pollution. Dr. Saucier actually has done research connecting the SO2 in the air to ALS cases in New Brunswick, and that there are actual hotspots near sources of this pollutant.
Bathurst in particular was mentioned, wasn't it?
Yes, Bathurst was highlighted. Edmundston's another location. And so this is research actually linking air pollution directly to health outcomes in New Brunswickers. But we know there are premature deaths every year. It's estimated about 190 premature deaths per year just in New Brunswick from air pollution, with an economic cost estimated at $1.4 billion. And so when it comes to air pollution, and this is, I'm echoing what the presenters and the experts in air pollution, in health, we're bringing forward. The priority needs to be health. And we need to understand that health is actually part of the economy, that there are financial implications at a household level and in terms of the healthcare system, in terms of productivity, when people are sick, when people have premature deaths due to air pollution. And so we need to strengthen these and also have a standalone right to a healthy environment. This is something that was brought forward. And so the Clean Air Act currently doesn't guarantee the right to clean air. And what was brought forward is having the right to a healthy environment as a standalone law could encompass having the right to clean air, clean water, and a clean environment generally. And this is actually a bill that leader of the Green Party, David Kuhn, has tabled and is going to committee next week to hear from witnesses. The right to a healthy environment needs to be enshrined in law. It currently isn't.
And people can, of course, watch these hearings online. There's a webcast they can watch in full. Is there anything that you want to add before we wrap up, Megan?
I guess when it comes to the Clean Air Act revision, I want to let people know that there are opportunities for them to engage in this review publicly. And so the Department of Environment has things on their website, and hopefully they'll promote it, but there are some public sessions and ways to comment. So I'd encourage people to get engaged, because right now there are New Brunswickers who are being made sick or who are dying because of air pollution that is being allowed. And so we need to have stronger regulations, and enforcement has been lacking to even enforce the laws we have. And so I hope that folks will engage and urge the government to have stronger protections for our health.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I've been speaking to Megan Mitton, Green Party MLA from Memramcook-Tantramar and Deputy Leader of the New Brunswick Green Party. Thanks again for joining the MB Media Co-op today.
Thank you so much.